Welcome to Zero Knowledge. I'm your host, Anna Rose. In this podcast, we will be exploring the latest in zero-knowledge research and the decentralized web, as well as new paradigms that promise to change the way we interact and transact online. For this week's episode, we have something a little out of the ordinary. Recorded near the end of the Amsterdam DevConnect week, Guillermo, Tarun, Brendan, and I jumped on the podcast for a spontaneous and pretty chaotic conversation. We do not stick to the script and manage to explore how blockchain and AI thinking differs, where it might intersect, how science could benefit from more adversarial testing, why peer review is broken, math theory stuff, and lots of random odds and ends. We may or may not have been drinking while recording this episode, so you'll have to listen to find out. But before we kick off, I just want to highlight the ZK Jobs Board, which is a spot where you could find a new gig working directly with ZK Tech. And I specifically want to highlight one job post, which would have you working with my team over at the ZK Validator. We are right now looking for a junior researcher who is interested in exploring and writing about ZK, proof of stake, general meta blockchain topics, and ways these intersect with privacy. Ideally, you'd have some technical background because we do want to go deep on these topics. So if this sounds like something you would be interested in, check out the job ad and get in touch. Now I'll let Tanya, the podcast producer, share a little bit about this week's sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by Zcash Community Grants. Zcash Community Grants is a grants program within the Zcash ecosystem that funds projects that advance the usability, security, privacy, and adoption of Zcash. Their primary areas of focus include wallets, core and security, interoperability, Zcash apps, ongoing services, education, ecosystem, and community. With that said, they also welcome novel ideas outside of these areas of focus. Zcash community grants are huge about inclusivity, and the grants committee will also consider grants of all sizes, from individual hobbyists to large organizations that build on or contribute to increased integration of Zcash. Previously awarded grants have ranged in size and scope, from a $3,000 grant all the way to a $1.2 million grant. To apply for a Zcash community grant and contribute towards the development of the Zcash protocol, visit the Zcash Grants Hub at zcashgrants.org. That's zcashgrants.org. You can find the link in the show notes. So thank you again, Zcash Community Grants. Now here's a DevConnect chat with Anna, Tarun, Guillermo, and Brendan.
We're here during should we still call it blockchain weeks? I don't know what they are. Whatever, weeks full of conferences in various cities. Currently, the city that we're in is Amsterdam. I think I'm actually on day 7 or 8.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And it is a marathon, not a sprint.
8, you went to the Cosmos thing.
I put on the Cosmos thing on Friday.
I would do it.
And I feel like these weeks are incredibly fun. You meet a lot of people. It's great. But it's also like there's this battle for sleep and not losing your voice and it's like you're trying to get around a city you're not familiar with. So there's like a lot of logistical thinking and yet you're zoned out and it's really hard. So I do feel like every time I go on one of these adventures, it is an adventure and it is hard actually. There's like there's a journey that we're going through. So I do wonder, Guillermo, at what point of the journey are you right now?
I am.
Because you're 6 days.
Yeah. Well, 6 days is like kind of a weird lie, right? Because I feel like it's the flight here and with the delay, I feel like I don't know if time has gone faster or slower because of like my brain being turned into a mush by the time zone change.
That's the other thing that it gives you is the jet lag.
That's right.
Add a little dollop of jet lag and much too much alcohol. What do you have? This bunch.
Yeah, just to say the least. That's one way of putting it.
What about you? Where are you at on your journey?
I've been to like too many of these lately. But one thing I will say that I think is maybe an observation that seems positive for the Ethereum ecosystem is, I say this in jest, but it does seem to be quite true, which is the more hackathons that happen, the more that actually any protocol development gets done. It feels like people need to have hackathons to actually, and like there's like almost one every 2 weeks now. So they really want to get the merge done.
This is quite spicy.
Yeah, that's true though. I mean,
I feel like it's 100% true.
Yeah.
Right? They get everyone in the same place. And they're not like a company, right?
And they get them building with the tools that are there.
Fair enough.
I mean, that's what was really missing, I think, over the last few years.
Well, I think that's the difference between like VC chains and organic chains, right? Is like they have to keep having conferences, whereas like, more corporate like blockchains end up not having to do that because they have like
corporate
OKRs and stuff, right? Like it's like a normal company. So
Middle management for VC chance.
hackathons are a form of middleware.
That's right.
What about you? At what stage of the journey are you?
So I had a bad week because I procrastinated preparing a talk that I had to do on the first day that I was here, or the second day, and so I like stayed up really late, and so I just never had a shot.
No, it was game over for you from the beginning. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been good, but also bad.
Okay, so I think what I think we can start to explore is like what have you been up to this week? Like what are the things that have happened? We can start easy. What are the events that you went to? You kind of remember those, yeah. Let's start with like what are the events, maybe some of the folks, and then let's go into some of the ideas.
Oh no.
So what are the events that you've been to?
Tarun, you wanna go ahead first?
Spoken at or enjoyed?
Tarun
He's
is
making
like
a face,
literally
like he's-
approximately like 70 events, and at each event he's given like 3 talks
Is the
each.
face because you don't like the question or you can't remember?
You know, I think the events have been interesting. I didn't really actually go to the main event, like the actual hackathon, but I think the campus off whatever, I don't know how to.
Would it
be
side
like
chain events?
Were pretty interesting. There's definitely a lot of people at them. You know, I don't think I heard too many new ideas, to be honest. I feel like it was a lot more. You know, I think a lot of stuff that was like coherent. I think if you're a new person in the space, it was probably really educational. You would have learned a lot. I think MEV Day was actually probably the best organized event I've gone to, perhaps ever in crypto. I thought it was like really well put, like professionally put on.
That's because you didn't go to ZK Summit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I knew I was walking into this one with that. That's why I was like, what do you want to talk about? Oh, talk about every event other than the one related to this podcast so that we can lambaste you.
No. That's right. That's how it is. I think that's actually exactly what it was.
So Tarun didn't make it to the ZK Summit, but I think the reason being is that
He's
there was
boring.
another event on the same day that asked Tarun to speak like 3 times, which meant he could not leave that space.
Oh, right.
And my bad was I should have been way more communicative with you about the date. Like I think you knew it was happening, but I wasn't like, this is the date, you have to be here. And so I'm sorry actually, because I really wanted you to be there.
It's all right. Everything is chill. I think like I said, I kind of feel like I didn't get, and maybe ZK Summit was the one place there was lots of new stuff, but I do feel like some of the other conferences I feel like were more about bringing in new developers than it was about, say, like some new kind of crazy idea. The Starkware thing today, I think actually I heard some cool projects coming out of that. So I'm kind of interested to go like watch some of the talks from that.
I think it's a hackathon, isn't it?
It's a hackathon plus people are like kind of giving talks on stuff. So, and it's like, I feel like the interesting thing, and I think you kind of pointed this out too, and I was like, we went from maybe like ZK events being mainly like, hey, here's a paper for like a new thing that I've worked on, and like hopefully we find investors and or engineers who want to build it, to like, hey, actually we're building this thing on top of something. So that change, I think, I'm not sure exactly what precipitated it. Things I've seen that I thought were interesting were like people who made tools for using a lot of kind of not so fun ZK software, like IDEs for Circom, which, a couple of years ago, people would just be like, well, why aren't you hand wiring circuits? I think I literally remember once like talking to Howard, and he was like, Howard from Alio, like just like 2018 or 19. He's like, yeah, like, I don't know why. I don't know why people complain so much. Like everyone could just like write the circuits manually. Like why do you need tools to do it?
Why don't you just write the polynomial constraints by hand? It's fine.
Right.
It's
So I
easier.
think it's like
Don't worry about
interesting
it.
to see that, hey, people are like building dev tools for ZK stuff. Like that actually wasn't. I don't think people gave a shit as much about that before.
Okay, what about you?
So I went to the Layer 2, like the L2 Beat conference, and ZK Summit, which I thought was the best. That was probably the best produced event that I've been to.
He has to say that.
No, I think he was paid to say that.
Yeah,
Independent,
give
I
me
was
the
not
mic
paid to
back,
say
please.
that. And actually, it's true. It's actually pretty
the only
sick.
reason I'm actually on this episode is to say that. But that was super cool because the venue was excellent, the food was excellent, and I thought the talks were really good. I liked Pratusha's talk on delegated proving, and my teammate Jacob's talk was awesome.
Wow, you didn't come to my talk? I'm just disappointed in you.
So I think it conflicted with something. Or,
Actually, no, it's good you didn't come to my talk. Actually, it's probably for the better, for your health, more generally speaking. So
Guillermo's, I'm sure, was excellent. It either conflicted with a Polygon talk or with the time that I spent on an Adirondack chair, like sleeping fully in the garden.
Oh, I see. So you were sleeping in my talk. I get it.
Exactly,
I understand that.
exactly.
It's fine. It's fine. Completely understood.
What struck out to me from layer 2, and this might be kind of controversial, was how I think expectations were being dialed back a little bit in terms of roadmaps. And I think a necessary dose of realism was like refreshing to see. So,
Are you talking about the L2 beat that?
Yeah.
And you mean like everyone had been saying we are about to enter this like full roll up world, and it's actually because I wasn't there, so maybe you can say more.
Yeah, so I think at least some of the ZK teams were sort of candid about things taking a little bit longer than they'd anticipated, and yeah, I mean nothing obviously against those teams, but I think it was good to like be realistic about when things are coming out.
Guillermo?
Yeah. What events was I? I guess I was mostly just at ZK Summit and the Celestia event, which I actually don't even know the official title of.
Modular Summit.
Modular Summit. There we go. That's the name. Which I think I found out I was speaking at that one or in some panel or something because of a tweet thread like that I was tagged in.
Everyone called you Tarun's alt?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, how is Tarun and Tarun's alt speaking on the same panel?
That's right, yeah. And I had no idea I was speaking, and I, afterwards I was told like, oh yeah, I was on this Telegram group with like 150 messages. I'm like, I'm sorry guys, I didn't mean it. I promise. And then afterwards, yeah. So those are the two.
And those were on the same day.
They were on the same day.
Two on the same day.
That's right. The reason Tarun couldn't come is because they were on the same day. I really struck it out. I actually went into both and heroically showed up approximately like 20 minutes late to the other one and ran on stage.
Oh,
and
really? I didn't know that.
I ran on.
Honestly, though, it could have been a little more dramatic.
I know. I was waiting for the background music.
You were kind of like not rockying it.
I know.
You were supposed to. What did you do?
He was supposed to rocky, and he just kind of like.
I just kind of like hobbled on.
He jogged like a 50-year-old man in a neighborhood.
Okay.
In a neighborhood in the suburbs.
Wow.
You could have done like some crowd work, like a few
I could have got everyone.
Yeah, you should have done that.
I should have gone around clapping, been like, yeah, I was worried. Well, I was first of all hoping there was going to be some background music while I was hopping on. That would have been ideal, but I didn't get any of that.
Also, I feel like that day you had told me you were pretty tired too. Like that was a rough day.
I was like, I don't remember actually my ZK Summit talk at all. Like I just have no idea what happened. My brain is.
It was really good. All good.
Was it actually?
Yes. There's recording.
Are you saying that just because you're on this podcast? I think that's the only reason you're on this podcast because you have no to say that, or you must say that just by law.
That. You brought me on this podcast,
that's right.
That I said
so
that.
You said that.
Only that.
Very good.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
You were good.
Aw, thanks.
It was really great, and people can actually now see it. I mean, it's already on the live stream. We're going to have videos soon. So.
Oh, that's right, because you're like cropping them to the individual things. Yeah.
I don't think you need to worry. You also, you had a few people in the audience who like, I could tell there was like a language that you were speaking to them about some kind of theorists.
Oh yeah, the measure
there
theorists.
There was a few people going like, yeah, he knows what he's saying. But it was very niche.
No. The background on this is Guillermo loves shitting on this one particular type of math. There's a couple types of mathematicians. Like Guillermo likes a like smoother version of the world than exists. And so one of the ways of doing that is to shit on people who have somewhat complicated mathematical theories that in practice you don't actually, you might be computing something that is related to this, but you actually never use the theory. But like if you go talk to like a math person, they're like, no, this is obviously the thing you're doing in production. Like you're obviously computing a Lebesgue integral. It's like, no, you're not.
Like none of this actually matters.
Right.
So, but yeah. No,
but it does matter. Filtrations matter, man.
They do not.
What kind of math was that?
It's called measure theory. I mean, I should be very careful because I suspect that there's a non-zero number of people who are going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, like this dude is either absolutely insane or, which is true, I guess that's fair. But secondarily, like has no idea what he's talking about. No, I promise I've studied measure theory. It's unfortunate for everyone involved. I'm sorry if you have as well. I would not recommend it.
I love measure theory.
I know. That's exactly why I would not recommend. I mean, imagine the kind of people that study it is like Tarun. So I don't know if you'd ever want to do that.
So there's a lot of very well-known paradoxes in like the formalism and formal logic of math, where like math is like not consistent in a lot of ways. Like the kind of basic rules of like how you count the natural numbers or proofs about the natural numbers don't work. And one of the most interesting set of these counterexamples that like say that like, hey, 1 + 1 might not equal 2 in like all scenarios that you might care about is usually these examples from measure theory. And so like logicians really care about this stuff. Most people who are practitioners who like care about something like in the real world don't. But if you care about like the foundations of math, like can math be logically consistent from like a philosophy standpoint, not like a practitioner's standpoint? You know, this is actually like a very interesting form of
I still don't know what you're talking about. I think Monok-Tarski, the fact that you can decompose a sphere into 4 spheres makes perfect sense. 100% makes.
But these logical paradoxes teach you about the limits of your abstraction. And so like that's a worthwhile endeavor. Like philosophy, like it's not like you're thinking of it from the perspective of like can I put it in a Turing machine? Like, that's not the point. The point is like the epistemological foundations of like a lot of stuff that we talk about has to somehow be consistent, but it's not. And these counterexamples are worth understanding for understanding reality.
I completely agree. I'm not saying the term I have for this is, I believe, mental masturbation. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. It's a worthwhile endeavor. At some point we were just talking about math as art or something. But it's great. I'm just saying, if someone tells you Monok-Tarski and Prod, you should run away immediately, or even measure theory.
Sure. If we start talking about ZFC, I'm leaving.
This is why I didn't mention any of the set theory axioms. I just like went straight to like epistemology and philosophical arguments directly. But I think like the mental masturbation aspect of it is, why do people like reading fiction? They like this like imaginary notion, like the notions of like, I have some core abstractions, I can build up these complicated things, and I can run into conflicts, dilemmas that I would maybe myself never run into. And for mathematicians, this is the same thing.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like even in crypto, people like thinking about things that are imaginary, like developing apps for Cardano.
All right. Well, I guess.
Wow, what a spicy take.
Maybe shall we let our listeners know what we're drinking right now, or shall we not?
We could leave it. We'd leave it as a surprise at the end of the episode. I don't think it's going to be that surprising. It's given
spicy.
Our current state of being, but
All right.
Well, actually, a kind of related question to this, which is a debate I had with this old coworker of mine, who I guess maybe you actually
deep learning.
I don't think you worked with him. Is my friend who works on sort of like building these like human level performance game bots at Facebook and DeepMind, and like the things that like beat humans at like StarCraft or Go or whatever. And he's been working on this game called Diplomacy, which is like a really annoying like. It's one of these games where like you collude with other people playing by like sending them text messages. So like you're the game is like you want to like kind of like control all the property in this like virtual world, but you can't do it on your own, and you have to like form these allegiances and then betray people at certain times. It's a form of like game where it's like it looks like a Go board or Stratego, but because of the spoken language thing, the state space of the game is way bigger because people can suddenly collude, and like when they collude, they like change like how many moves are actually accessible to the different types of users, stuff like that. So like
real world.
So from this kind of like, hey, how do we build automated bots that can beat humans at this?
But also like predicting collusions, all these things, all of the mechanics within it too, right?
And a lot of the success of like being able to beat the humans comes from these like large language models, like GPT-3 style stuff. And the problem with that, like we were just having this argument at this bar in New York, and I was like obviously like drunkenly yelling. I was just like the
as you usually are.
Reason he was just like, like we don't have theory for this, but like just make it bigger, like just make the model bigger. I don't really give a shit why it works. And like we had this like interesting kind of philosophical argument of like the difference between like AI and crypto, where like in crypto, because you actually care about the adversarial behavior existing against your model, you're not just like, I don't care if my model is like good, perfect in some sense. up to some like very, very well controlled error, you basically need a lot more mathematical formalism. And my friend was just like, yeah, like who cares if we don't know the theory, if it works and it's like good enough, if it quacks like a duck, works like a duck, it looks like a duck, then like it must be a duck. And I was just like, yeah, but like, do you have any sort of like, there's no epistemology for why this thing even behaved correctly. You're just like, okay, yeah, I was able to sort of predict that like Anna, when she plays diplomacy, talks a lot about sparkling water when she's trying to like say that. She makes these like sparkling wine, those jokes that people write that are like, X is sparkling.
Oh, I love that joke. That's my favorite joke in the world.
Your meme template.
Wait, what is this joke? I don't know
What? Have you never seen this?
You explain one.
So the classic joke goes, it's only a Frankenstein if it's from the Frankenstein region of France. Otherwise, it's just a sparkling monster.
Yes,
Got it.
Yeah, that's the
right.
classic.
Got it.
And then it's like yeah, sure, they're learning some pattern matching on this, but like you don't actually understand like why people are colluding or like the strategy that's actually being learned of the different players in the game. And yes, it's effective, right? Like it somehow has worked, but yeah, you have absolutely no understanding how to transfer any of this knowledge, and you have to like basically increasingly just throw more and more computation at it and like less and less like actual strategy. And so
This is a game.
This is a diplomacy game.
And is the point of the game to show you that you're just throwing a lot of computation at it instead of being able to do this? Or is this more like, this is kind of the
humans have played this game for like almost a century.
Oh, you mean diplomacy, like the concept of diplomacy?
No. This is a game.
Specific game with specific
It's a
rules.
game called Diplomacy.
Okay, I don't know
And
it.
it's like a board game that like can last like 20 hours. It's like a
Okay.
really like intense board game. And it can play up to like, I think 8 players. And basically what happens is like in the middle of the game, people will start colluding with each other and they kind of can communicate with each other in certain ways. And so a lot of the game strategy is not just like the pieces on the board.
Yeah.
It's also like trying to figure out if like 2 players are actually one now or like if they're breaking up. And that opens up the state space, right? Because like you as you're playing the game, you might have gone from 8 real players to only 2 because there's 2 cartels. Right. And so that changes how you design, how you try to beat this versus like something that's like Go where it's like sort of partial information, but it's actually really a game of complete information. It's just that like it's too big of a search space. So you're just trying to like not pretend it's incomplete and try to learn as much as you can from a small number of moves. Here it's actually incomplete because it depends on our spoken language. Like we're talking to each other and communicating, and like that changes the kind of action space of the game.
It's also quite imperfect too.
And it's it's almost emotional, right? It's like you're going to collude.
Right. That's why
right.
I made this kind of bad joke about like, hey, maybe like when you make a joke to someone when you're colluding with them, you like say the sparkling France region joke. Maybe that was a little too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of references there that I may not have had.
Yeah, but I get the reason I bring this up is like there's some sort of notion of like. One of the reasons I like crypto, even though this is not a reason Guillermo does, clearly, is that like I believe in like very strongly in the value of like the epistemological foundations of like whether you can reason about why something works. And you just in AI, we're just like completely we started the early days of AI actually were really focused on that, right? And we just threw it out of the water because we're just like, yeah, we're just going to throw more GPUs at it. We're just going to use the energy consumption of Kenya to just like to train this diplomacy model, and but also not have any understanding of like why certain strategies work or the reasons for anything, and that I think one thing about crypto is I feel like it does actually.
I think you think it does do it. So
it
crypto
does do that.
like okay,
but this gets down to the one philosophy I have is you should care about epistemological foundations, including measure theory, which he hates.
No, I care about measure. I like measure theory. It's a very pretty thing. It's just irrelevant in a lot of cases. But I think the big thing is that unlike cryptographers, right? Like AI, machine learning, none of this has had to deal with the fact that like North Korea is trying to like screw with your like system, right? Like in order to do that, you have to like
they're the hackers.
Yeah, right? Like my point is, crypto has this like daily attacks on it. That's like crypto, I mean cryptography generally, although I suspect crypto as well. But like no one's going to be like, yes, I'm going to screw with your GPT-3 model in order to like make you say something you didn't intend. Like whatever you're going to do about that now.
People do that for these image models.
No, people do that. And this is great. I love adversarial, not adversarial learning, but in fact like adversarial. Like
yes, someone I do think actually we should get on this podcast is this guy who is fuck, I'm forgetting his name, but he's one of Bonnet's. He's co-advised by Bonnet and someone in the theoretical computer science department at Stanford.
Okay.
And he has like his entire PhD has been he actually did a bunch of like Monero attacks in the beginning of his PhD, but the end of his PhD was just like adversarially breaking like lots of AI things and like trying to generate like kind of treat it like a crypto problem. And then like destroying like the facial recognition thing, or like turning like hot dog into not hot dog.
Yeah,
you
with
know?
like single stickers or single pixels or something like that. You can do that absolutely.
And I think like the point is like if you don't understand how your model works, you can never actually make it adversary resistant. And that's just like I think that's like a fundamental truism of nature. And like we haven't.
Well, some people might tell you that's not true, right? They might just like be like, oh, it's just fine. It's trained on the distribution of like generated samples of generated adversarial samples, and then afterwards retrain again until you reach a fixed point.
You don't even know if you have the right distribution.
I look, I'm just giving you the argument. I'm not saying I agree.
Yeah. Look. A lot of people got very rich from convincing people that like that was all you needed to do self-driving cars. So like I mean, yes,
this is true, right?
It has not happened yet, though. So let the point be known that there's no self-driving cars. Really, they're not many like that, and most of it is still like
SFA area where it's always beautiful and sunny, and there's no problem.
Well, Phoenix, really.
Oh yeah, well that's just
Phoenix apparently really easy. No pedestrian traffic because it's like a suburban city. So even though they had one accident, one person killed by a self-driving car there. So.
It's a lot of heuristics, right? It's not like this like single model that like knows how to drive a car. They just like program around edge cases and.
But the investor pitch decks,
it's all AI.
They all say that it's that, right? Like, and like this is why I like my friends in AI. I feel like I'm just like philosophically drifting further and further away from them because of this like this fact that like none of them seem to give a shit about this anymore. They're just like must just like throw more data at it and prod.
It's fine.
It'll eventually fix itself.
Is there a moment where these two fields merge enough that like the attack surface is attractive so that it could be like adversarial?
Oh, I really hope so. That would be interesting.
That you actually like have to be serious?
Well, I think maybe a good question is like what types of applications of AI do you think that would happen? Like the nation states fucking with facial detection so that someone else can't detect their spy is like a simple one. I'm sure that look, given how many papers have been written on this in the last 5 years in machine learning literature, I would not be surprised if like there is some nation state that's tried to do that.
Yeah, for sure. It like that's the easiest low hanging fruit, but like you could imagine a number of other things, right? Like you can imagine like more complicated systems where you just like by putting in just the right input, like congratulations, you're like now in, or like you do like more interesting things like just end up being wrong at a structural level that are really hard to notice until like way later.
Yeah, and one of the problems I think like philosophically between something like classical optimal control, which is like what's used to do autopilot in planes,
where you do have
guarantees.
Quite weird, but quite strict guarantees about what it does,
versus like the self-driving car doing reinforcement learning and like trying to like teach itself from its mistakes is like you don't have any guarantees in the latter case, and in some ways like I just like think people kind of underestimate the more and more we have the Internet of shit. I mean, the Internet of Things. The more and more of these like
it's a great account.
ML attacks that will happen, and the more that maybe crypto and AI have like, but it's going to be AI having to like eat some humble pie.
I really
first.
hope Andre does not listen to this podcast. Or
Which Andre?
Tesla.
Oh, I mean, come on, the dude wrote a fucking blog post about writing a Bitcoin node as if he's like paying attention to anything new in cryptography.
Oh,
very recently too.
That's right. Yeah, it was actually quite recent.
Finish him.
No, he's kind of like
he's really fucking smart though.
He's like the Guillermo of the self-driving car revolution.
I can't tell whether this is an offensive statement or a really flattering one. I think it was
both.
Hey. Well, thank you, but hey.
I am now wondering though, what is the overlap like of the AI community? Like you were talking about like your AI friends.
Yeah.
Have some of them moved over?
No, a lot of them just view me as the weird like guy in crypto
who like has NFTs. And
that's right. Yeah. You're like you're creating systems to attempt to topple governments yourself personally.
Burning
well, they all still
the
kind of
energy.
only think of it in terms of this like whatever Bitcoin maximalism
God.
said, like everything about like escaping a country and stuff like that.
Oh no.
But I do think they've like started to appreciate stable coins. Like, so for instance, like my mom has started sending stable coins. I'm bucketing my mom in this because like, that she's like statistician and she's more of like
AI?
No, but she's like classical statistics, like, clinical trial stuff.
Yeah, my mom sends me stablecoin stuff, but for a very different reason.
Well, your mom's a degen.
Yeah, this is true.
Like Guillermo's mom is like farming alongside of the big dogs.
Which Anon is she then?
I have no idea. She has not told me.
I did get the privilege of finally meeting her recently at Year's graduation, and she thought I wasn't real. So it's the same as the alt thing where people think
She really did. Yeah, for the longest time.
Talking about this fictional character called Tarun.
That's this joke.
Who's telling him to do things.
Yeah. No, it's this joke. It's like it's definitely like Tarun's not real. Like every time we're gonna meet him, like he just somehow dips at the last second. So he like obviously can't be real. Even my girlfriend was thinking this too, and she was like, "Are you serious?" Like I've seen pictures, but like clearly probably a paid actor. So
wow, that's such a flip on the Twitter narrative.
I
right now.
know. It's exactly the opposite.
exactly
Shockingly.
IRL on Twitter, not the same. Who would have thunk?
Right. I mean, and then you
who's out?
Yeah.
Right. And then you ate her arepas, actually. That sounds weird. But I literally do mean like Venezuelan arepas. Like,
Yes,
you know,
they're
we're
great.
just for my...
Guillermo's mom's food. You got to eat it.
All right, there you go.
Confirmation.
Shout out.
There you go.
But I guess one thing that maybe the ZK stuff, I think in general, maybe, and I don't know if you guys, I'm curious of like whether you think this will be the way that AI and crypto actually merge, is that there's just like a lot more complicated applications that are sort of closer to not the complexity of like a GPT-3 style model, but like simpler AI models that I think we're going to start seeing people make ZK proofs of validity for. So like one way of saying, hey, this AI model was not manipulated by some adversarial example, is it was like trained on like these particular data set, and you can verify, here's a proof of the data set, here's a proof of like the training model, the inference. So one of the cooler examples that I saw was this topology, which is like
Yeah, I
this
think
like
I've heard of this.
Starkware game engine. Disclosure, tiny investor, but they made a neural net on Starkware that only inference, so like you had to train it elsewhere, but it would like generate a proof that of like given a set of input data points that like it generated the right data point. And like, you know, in crypto, that amount of computation, they're doing like pretty dense matrix multiplies. Like the matrix sizes were like, you know, 1,000 by 1,000. Like it was something that like you could never even imagine doing on a public chain right now. And somehow there's also this future world where the ZK stuff enables these adversarial things to somehow be more transparent. And like that, I don't know who in the world is thinking about that, but like there's got to be some genius somewhere in Russia like thinking about, or like maybe just left Russia thinking about that.
I know of one. I think WorldCoin is looking at doing
that's a good
inference,
point, actually.
Like on hardware. Yeah,
I was like, no.
friends with WorldCoin.
Yeah, I love Remco though.
Yeah,
Very
I like
smart.
Remco too.
Yeah,
Although we had a weird Twitter thing with, what is it?
on
Like,
Remez.
on Remez.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
But anyway, I guess my point is, I think like I hope that maybe if I actually make it to the ZK Summit and Anna lets me give a talk, I'm actually going to try to do a talk of like zero knowledge proof for AI people and like
So
try to
good.
give these like examples, because I actually think like there is a lot of potential overlap if the ZK stuff gets to the point that you can like help enforce some like, hey, adversaries didn't do more than X.
Well,
on
but
this.
that also yields really funny things, right? Where if you have an adversarial example for a fixed network, you could just put it in and have like a very nice little proof that says, I computed it right, I promise, which you did.
Well, the key though, let's say you're doing
If you have a
something-
robust algorithm,
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah, I
Okay,
agree.
fine.
Robust training.
We are pre like assuming that. Okay, fine.
we're assuming. Like here's one example that like I have this friend who does like research that I find very like it kind of is always going to be an Ouroboros in some sense, but like sort of like ethics in AI and like how do you reduce bias stuff, because it's actually quite hard to do. But imagine if you could actually say like, I trained this algorithm on this data set. Here's a public data set, and here's a proof that I did not edit the weights. And I did not retrain or augment any of it. And
That
like
one's
you can
interesting.
see that
Yeah.
like, hey, like this is the sample, has this much diversity or of like, you know, population sampling.
Right.
And like that way you can publicly verify that, hey, it's not biased in some way. And somehow like the ethics in AI people aren't super technical, don't know a lot about crypto, and so they don't think about this type of stuff. It's the same for like a lot of adversarial learning people. And someday there will be a different type of crossover.
I want to go back to the topology one. Like the thing is with that example that you were giving, when it says like, is the validity proof like this idea of like using validity, is it in the protocol itself, or is it just the fact that it's on a ZK rollup the fact that it's
No,
validity
the
proofed.
contract actually does generate a proof
Right.
of each constraint on like each matrix, on each fuse multiply add technique.
Okay.
I mean, they also did like integrators on chain and stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
RK4, like
They're definitely like of all the ZK
It's kinda crazy.
application, they're like the only ones where I'm like, wow, you're really trying to do something that's going to take 10 years because like it's like you're,
Big vision.
It's like kind of crazy
It is
to
still
try to
fucking
like
cool,
do
though.
a full game engine this way, but like
Yeah.
if you can do that, then like this AI type of stuff is going to be similar.
Yeah.
It's going to have a similar. So there's like a whole world of these things people don't think about. And I guess the open-end episode is a good time to pose that question.
Yeah, that's good. If you have a plan for that talk, I'm so down.
I mean, I'd probably do it with my friend. I'd basically
Yeah.
be like, he was a skeptic, and I'd try to like basically bring him and be like, we're gonna
show
have-
you some stuff, kid.
we're going no, we're gonna have a dual talk. We're gonna have
okay.
I present the crypto side, he presents the AI side, and it's like one of those like thesis, antithesis, synthesis type of talks. And like he does I do the first thing, he does the second thing, and then we kind of merge. And so like, where could they merge?
You have not been drinking enough mezcal to not be able to say antithesis yet.
Antithesis.
Oh shit! I spoiled the
You gave it
surprise.
away.
Damn it! Well, if people are listening, we'll know then.
Okay.
There you go.
Are there any other types of technologies you guys are like, oh, I wish like crypto intersected?
That was exactly the question I was just about to ask you. I kid you not. You just literally, we just had like I was about to say, what I was going to say is like, I know this episode is about us being in Amsterdam, but are there any other fields basically that we should be having adversarial models in? Like, why aren't we using a lot of this stuff? Is it like, and you go to AI because it's like so super technical, a lot of data, it's very exciting.
Also influences like everyone on Earth's life now at this point.
Oh yeah,
Right.
But are there
in a weird way.
That is terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Like
Internet of shit.
planes. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know who was it told me, and I have no idea to the veracity of the story. But apparently, like autoland on planes now actually uses neural nets and
I
stuff.
feel
Really?
like the
That's
other,
crazy.
the all
Yeah,
the other
exactly. That's
times,
right.
maybe the challenge is every other time you're trying to like mix crypto with something, you end up with these sort of like, we're gonna tokenize.
Oh god.
Look,
Environment.
Dentacoin
We're
existed.
gonna
We
tokenize
know Dentacoin
legal
existed.
fees, and it's just very boring. What? Dentacoin Maximus? Is that what you just said?
No, Dentacoin
What even is
whale.
Dentacoin?
Well,
Dentacoin was a really bad
Disclosure.
ICO in 2017 that was like a
legend.
it was
truly.
like
The olden
it hit like
times.
$1 billion market cap, and its entire
no.
entire pitch was a coin for dentists to use with each other. Didn't even have like a good pitch.
Wouldn't that? So I'm a, I guess full disclosure, like a crypto investment idiot.
Yeah.
But if you had something
Cheers.
like Dentacoin that was just notorious, wouldn't it sort of make sense to just accumulate a large position? Oh, like when it was at the bottom, because you know that people will always be talking about Dentacoin.
Oh.
It might just be the next dog coin. Why not? From dogs
From
to Denta.
dentists.
I mean, I agree, but it depends on whether you're an anon crypto investor
This
or
is
a
not financial
self-respecting,
advice.
or whether you're a self-respecting one and you need
just put it in your ENS.
Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think if we're thinking about other technologies or at least things in science, there's kind of this funny, weird thing where crypto and AI, maybe that's the reason they keep popping up, and like you see really bad ICOs that don't really make any sense or around this, is that they have this. They both are like the ultimate narrative storytelling, right? Like they both have these like different versions of the world. They're easy to tell a lot of people. There's been a lot of advancement. You can be like, I can impact people's lives more directly.
It also point to specific things too, right? Like that have happened in these things, in these
Right.
fields, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you can point to some impact that like, maybe not every person on Earth can see exactly what they're doing, but you're like, okay, I kind of can get like a large portion of the planet's population to appreciate them.
Right.
But one thing that's interesting is like adversarial models don't exist in science in some ways. It's like it's actually
Wow.
opposite.
An adversarial god just fucking with your experiments. I mean, that's honestly
what is adversary in this case? Like, what would it look like?
Peer
even?
review system is adversarial. Guillermo can tell you lots about
Wait,
this.
wait, could that be then? I mean, but you don't want to.
You don't
the
wanna-
minute I
you don't
think
wanna
of
be
crypto,
the
I'm like,
dec-
do you want to tokenize it? And I'm like,
there you
oh,
go. Tokenizing
gross.
peer
You don't want to
review.
be the DeSci stuff. That stuff is like half baked.
DeSci?
Decentralized science. There you
go. Learn you anything
There
every
is a-
day.
there
Is
is-
it cool?
No.
Okay.
But decentralized peer review, or like having a way of paying people who do peer review somehow would maybe
That might be
better.
interesting. Yeah, the question is how do you align incentives?
Well, actually,
Yeah,
wait,
wouldn't it
Guillermo,
be
you
tricky?
as the only actual PhD in this room.
Oh God, I
right? You don't have one yet, right? Okay. You as the only actual PhD in this room.
What?
You should explain the problems and pitfalls of peer review, the pros and cons. Explain how it works, because like people might not know.
Okay, that's right.
Because
Yeah,
in crypto, a lot of people never like publish their papers. They just like put it on archive or like ePrint. Yeah.
So the peer review process is, you submit a paper usually to some cranky old people who are a conference. Tenured
or crankiness and tenure are very correlated.
That's right, indeed. And what happens usually is, you get some pretty good comments back. So often people are actually quite nice and they're like, oh, this is good or interesting. And then every once in a while you get one reviewer who just absolutely shits on your paper and says, sorry, like it doesn't matter what you do, but like there's no way you could ever get this in because like X or Y or Z reasons. This is not always true. Often people are generally nice. But the point is, there's this weird system. Also, by the way, the fact that I'm going to go on a little side rant here is that peer review is the golden standard. It's a standard. It is a shit standard. And I'm not saying like there are like necessarily better standards I can think of immediately, but it is a garbage standard. And if everyone tells you like it's not a peer reviewed study, you should tell them like any number of things are not peer reviewed that are useful. Like jumping out of an airplane probably causes death with high probability is a particularly useful thing that we have not peer reviewed.
Well, an interesting thing is that like we've actually developed these kind of like meta adversarial things against peer review,
reviews.
like p-value hacking. So
it's beautiful.
So p-values are just like under a lot of very stringent assumptions, a way of like measuring like, hey, like I did a hypothesis test that says, is it possible for the opposite of my conclusion to be true?
I still don't think most people can define what a p-value is who use p-values in their papers. That's my hot take of the day. Actually,
I agree with that.
Certain, actually.
Yeah, but the idea of a p-value is it tells you sort of an estimation of the probability that your prediction of your solution to the hypothesis is incorrect, and people interpret it as a percentage. So if I say p equals 5%, that means that I have 95% confidence that the hypothesis is true. But the problem is the definition of a p-value assumes a certain model for how you generate the data, how you actually compute what the error probability is.
It's just central limit theorem, dude. It's obviously a Gaussian.
Everything's
everything is CLT, independent ID, CLT.
Humans exist because all their molecules are
independent. That's exactly right.
Okay, I think
that's a good one.
Here's a small question: has anyone explored like peer reviewing the peer reviewers? Like, has there been an evaluation technique on peer reviewers
the
ever
answer
attempted?
Is, maybe
Sometimes.
not evaluation on peer reviewers, but often like open peer review is a thing that happens, for example, in AI a lot, right?
Oh.
Where peer reviewers, like when they post their review, so you have to post your paper online, publicly accessible for everyone to see, and reviewers have to post their reviews online, also publicly accessible, even though they are pseudonymous.
Oh.
So they do have an identity, but it's like, the point is that you can't track who it is.
Do they get thumbs up, thumbs down?
Roughly,
yes.
You get some score.
The wisdom of the crowd?
Once they're public,
the crowd can
Don't you worry about that a little bit? Like,
Yes.
because then that's gameable.
That's just hilarious.
You hire a bunch of bots.
This is exactly why, like, there has to be some weird solution that maybe it's not like crypto
Tokenize
itself.
Tokenize it.
There you go.
It's a terrible idea.
Nailed it.
But we should make the jingle.
Oh no!
It'll just come in once in a while. Have a sound effect.
I think
soundboard.
the craziest thing about peer review is it reminds it's there's a lot of like labor abuse that exists in a lot of like established very like high
Garbage fields. Sorry, I didn't say that.
No, not that. I mean more like high sort of like societal value fields, even though they might not be like a large part of the economy. So like in fashion, in music, in like art, there's like tons of unpaid I'm putting air quotes on it. Like there's all these unpaid jobs and people or like people even pay for them in some cases. And they basically effectively are jobs where it's like, hey, I get to say I like
status
work. It's a status thing, right?
You're paid in status.
But the weird thing is usually that happens to people early in their career.
Yeah.
The peer review system is actually kind of the opposite. People later in their career don't get paid to review all these papers for free, and then Elsevier and publishers are the ones who sell it back to the university.
Yep.
So,
Wait, is it status there though? Are they status peer reviewing? Why do they do it?
In part, I
Do
think
they have to?
well, no. There's a collusion effect. You actually want other people to basically be saying like your papers are good, and there's kind of like a
Wait, are you saying like you don't become a peer reviewer
by reviewing? You're able to like express your preferences, not necessarily objective, and
About
by
what you
doing
want.
about your own papers? Like
you
what
might
you
you might
want
say things like,
published.
"Hey, cite me."
Right,
in a
right,
peer
right.
review. People
That's
say that
right.
all the time.
But do you get to shape the narrative in a weird way? Do you
Yes.
get to
Yes.
direct
Yeah.
ideas towards your idea?
Well,
You're
you
like
also
a
get to say-
producer. It's like the difference between producer and director in a movie.
That's right. But you also get to say
but-
yes
and
or
they
no,
are the
right?
producer?
I think they're kind of the producer.
Right.
Okay. They don't create the art. They don't create the work.
Yeah,
that's
but
right,
they
that's right.
they're like, I want you to
This is
give it
bad.
like a
This
little
won't-
bit more superhero.
For this
Whatever.
conference, the sort of essence of this conference is X, and this paper does not meet the essence of this. Right.
Right.
Well, what does the fucking essence of the conference mean? Well, it's like whatever that reviewer thinks.
wants.
But also,
And
I mean,
whatever their work may represent.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
you also get to do it via like kind of quasi-censorship effect, right? Like you also get to vote down on papers that you don't think should make it, independent of like, there might be many reasons why this is true. Of course, many papers are usually garbage, even those that are published. But generally speaking, right, like there is a censorship idea of like, someone tries to publish something that you kind of don't think is interesting or doesn't fit the narrative, even though it might be interesting in like a very general sense. But like, of course, we only have our own weird subjective things, right? And you just get to like downvote it and be like, sorry, actually, this is not that interesting at the end of the day, even though it might be a very interesting topic. And again, this is always
interesting
true.
that there's like these voting. You're voting. There's
Yeah,
scores,
there's
numeric
scoring.
recall. There's something.
This is why a lot of the
Yeah.
this is why a lot of the crypto stuff somehow should intersect here.
Yeah.
And also get rid of a lot of the labor abuse. Because like
Right.
in my mind, there's this huge labor abuse going on.
Yep.
That
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it's for status, but also someone is making money off this, right? And it's
Right.
fucking
Who is
crazy
it?
when you're a professor at a university, you're reviewing, and then you go to a publisher like Elsevier or Nature or Science, and then the publisher is the one who's like, hey, give us reviews for
Yep.
free. And then the publisher sells that back to your institution.
Yep.
Like that is the ultimate scam. Like they're taking free labor, and it's all based on the brand of the journal and the impact factor and some fucking metrics that are
Although,
gamed.
I mean, okay, one, are they making a lot
Yes,
of money?
their margins are like they're like over 50%, right? I thought it was,
80%,
yeah,
or
okay,
something.
there you go, 80%. As
I mean, it's not like they're not like big growing businesses, but they're like $10 billion businesses.
They're like stable
yeah,
who have-
pariah businesses, maybe.
who have tons
like,
of
who've been-
free, very high skilled labor. In fact, the like medium skilled labor, the ones who are like distributing and the sales and whatever, they're getting paid,
They're
but the
the
highest
private,
skilled
yes.
labor isn't. It's the opposite of the art, music,
who
and
owns them though? Who
they're
are
public companies.
Oh, they're okay.
They're huge public companies.
Are they? Is
Yeah,
this a big
Elsevier's
public?
here. Yeah, we're in the Netherlands. That's
Oh,
the
shit,
home
you're
of
right.
Elsevier.
Actually, you're totally right.
Journals.
Yeah,
Yeah, journals.
They're
So-
these aggregation companies.
But
Man,
it's not
I
like
know
aggregation
nothing about this journal world. I mean, I know they exist. I know that like
But like, think do you get why the labor thing is like kind of an abusive labor thing, right? Like, it's like, why are the professors and grad students doing this for free, and then their
Yeah.
institution is paying to buy back their labor?
and at the same time, like right now, as you describe this, all I can think is it's going to go out the door. Like there's no way
fingers
this
crossed.
will.
Well, sort of.
And how annoyed will they be when that happens?
But
Like the music industry in
the interesting
1999.
thing is AI and high energy physics and math have basically moved off the journal system. They do everything in preprints. There are journals, but only when it's like really seminal, like, you know, Terrence Tao proves some weird kind of crazy
So wait,
thing.
who's on it then?
Well, no, everything is just done on the internet more publicly.
Yeah, and then
in those
afterwards
fields.
submitted to journals.
And then
Okay,
later
okay.
you submit.
So this is
you
actually
get,
pretty
you get
Still are
internet
using
review
that.
first.
Oh, okay. You're
But
still
only certain fields. Like if you go to biology, it's like, no,
No,
you didn't publish in
correct.
Nature. Like, what are you doing? Like, your career is shit. Like, there's a lot of this status
That's true.
game stuff that like you see in like art, music, finance, or art, music, sort of like.
The crazy part, though, is it's not just the reviews, though. It's literally like the papers themselves are like essentially done for free, right? Like the a lot of the work that goes into not just like reviews, but also the papers, like just gets done for these like publishers for free, and then they go and sell it back. And I mean, in a lot of cases in math and computer science and physics, it's very, very common to upload your preprints first. So it's always available publicly online. But in some cases, it's actually not. Like you will get sued if you like publish your papers online for free and then like try to publish it like
submit
afterwards and stuff
But
like
wait, you just said like a bunch of fields moved off it.
That's right.
How does that work then?
They just started publishing on the internet. So Archive, which is sort of the
Yeah.
main preprint archive, was created by Paul Ginsberg, who is a physics professor at Cornell, who famously, I remember when I was an undergrad there, they built a new physics building, and he's kind of a true hippie. Like, and he was like in his office, and I guess he like passed out in his office, and then like the police came and like were like, oh, there's a homeless guy like sleeping in the and then it was so I remember that was like one of the funniest things that happened. This was like 2007 or 8 or something.
Oh god,
like, I was dying.
That's really funny.
But he's an interesting character, and so like the idea was that a lot of high energy physics research, a little bit like AI at that time, like obviously in a different scale, was stuff where there was stuff that was done in empirical stuff. So people at particle accelerators were kind of writing technical reports on like things they saw that were sort of like the way Guillermo and I started writing papers. We just like post them online. We would see what feedback is before we refine them.
Yep.
People would just post those, and they'd usually only share them within each accelerators. Like CERN, Particle CERN, Switzerland, they would have their own technical report. That's
They had a
actually
mailing list.
That's
Right, they're mailing
their
us.
peer review because peers.
Yeah,
actually.
peer.
Yeah.
But
it's huge, right?
It's sort of like push, not pull, or vice versa, pull, not push. Like you just post it, and then if people review it, it's
If
not
it's
like a thing where you're
interesting enough,
forcing people to
People will comment.
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
And so then a bunch of the different particle accelerators like started realizing like, hey, we actually should be like sharing our technical reports. Yeah, they're not finished, but if we like shared some of that, we would like probably save someone like some dead ends that they couldn't go to.
Also catch early mistakes too a lot.
Catch early, yeah.
I mean, like the whatever
that.
superluminal neutrinos and all this stuff, right?
Right. Well, we were at a
this is
time.
much
We were at a
later,
time,
to
we were
be
at a
fair,
time
but-
where like baryons were still not classified fully.
Right.
So
No,
fine.
we're
It's a
still. This is
different
like
world.
this is jumping ahead on the timeline.
Yeah,
but my point
yeah.
is like this was caught before it like went out. to
I think
publishing.
people who are like at the boundary of theory and production, like people who are trying to take theory and like do really hard experiments to like validate really complicated theory, they oftentimes need, and it's not true that like other fields don't have this, but like for some reason that ends up being the space where people want to make these kind of like very quick intellectual works that they share quickly rather than like have to go through the whole full peer review process. And so that was where it started, and that sort of was
Ballooned.
the formation, the genesis of Archive. But then, of course, the most famous thing was Perelman, who won the Fields Medal and kind of went to go live in Siberia and whatever. Yeah, true goat. None of us are. None of us. He posted this proof of like this very famous conjecture on Archive. Never got peer reviewed, and then it turned out it was right. And like he won this $1 million prize, and he hated society for giving him $1 million. So then he went to go live as a recluse with his mother in Siberia.
That's right.
I thought he was working on the Riemann.
No, Poincare conjecture. Poincare conjecture.
No. So I know that he proved the Poincare conjecture, but I thought that people speculated that he hadn't actually like retired entirely from
I'm
that.
sure he's not retired, but he
like, was
hates
working on something else.
institutions. He
Right.
basically was like, why does it matter that I am an academic institution if I publish something that was correct? And there's truth, and there's both like good things and bad things. Institutions are a heuristic. They let you like assume a lot of things without having to like actually spend years figuring them out. At the same time, he has a good point of like there was like he was able to kind of like do a lot of stuff on his own. So but I don't know if he would be doing Riemann hypothesis because like his background is more in like
Richie flows
and like probability stuff,
surgeries.
measure theory, all the shit that like Guillermo hates.
Hey,
No, it's true. It's like literally like
I
so
wanna say-
one of my undergrad advisors like proved this measure theory inequality that was used in that paper, and like when I looked at the proof of that, I was like, this is all like in reality like no fucking thing that's like really, homotopy equivalent to 3-sphere would ever fucking look like this edge case. And that's like the Guillermo like measure theory is useless thing.
no, okay. Now I'm on the measure theory thing. I want to set the record straight. I don't hate
Do it.
measure theory. I actually find it quite beautiful, right? Like I have studied measure theory, the stochastic, whatever processes, stochastic differential equations, the whole thing, right? But like my point is, what I'm pushing back against a lot, and I do this a lot, is like in papers, it's very easy to go down a fucking rabbit hole of just like proving a bunch of shit that turns out to kind of be irrelevant and is really obvious if you know like basic real analysis or, basic measure theory. But like reviewers will come back to you and be like, oh, but like, how do you know this thing converges? Like, dude, it's literally 3 lines. Like if you took an undergrad class in this thing, you would know what.
One place I will disagree with this is that, there's a lot of like counterexamples that generally come up from you not stating the correct assumptions.
No, but like, okay. So being very clear here, in our papers, we state the exact assumptions.
Yeah,
and we
but
say
ours are not like real math papers.
No, this is fine.
They're
This is
kinda
very different,
not like,
right?
Yeah. I mean, like actual like
sure.
aesthetically pretty math is very different.
like even whatever, like the Jordan curve theorem, right, is really easy to prove in the case where you assume that everything is differentiable or like point-wise.
It's a homework problem.
But it's not a homework problem now, right? The general case is pretty hard. The general case isn't even true on courses. Oh, sorry.
Can I actually bring us back to peer review? Because I was so down.
Yeah, Guillermo just doesn't like me making fun of this. But this is actually something I have personally faced in peer review where like, usually people are just like, oh, like you like didn't mention this complicated counterexample. And I usually am like, oh yeah, you're right. Guillermo, on the other hand, is like, no. My definition should have restricted it so that you never had that fucking...
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
But that's a philosophical difference.
No, but my point is like, I don't, it's not that I don't think that people shouldn't be careful, is that like, I think people should be extremely careful, but in the paper, it does not matter. Like if you knew the thing you needed, like if you knew the exact, for example, in one of our cases, we have something that like is technically not necessarily even like integrable in like a usual sense. It is like Lebesgue integrable, but not like normal Riemann integrable.
Oh, you mean the optimal fees paper?
No,
I love that we've fed you this much mezcal.
Sorry,
and you're arguing now about a very specific part.
This is like you may have to cut this because this is like so in the weeds.
I know. We're gonna leave it, but I think I might bring us back
all right, fine.
Because actually, it sounds like what you were actually proposing. I don't think we've proposed a solution. I think we've proposed a problem.
Right.
I think we've said, hey, there's a problem. It's also, it's a problem for ZK papers as well.
Yeah, it's a problem we've actually run into, but
actually, no.
Wait,
no, I'm not going to say.
Wait. But even if he's not going to say one, I think the Planck trail of bits thing is a really great example, right? Where like a mistake in the paper was never verified until like later by a auditor.
This is Trail of Bits, the recent thing.
Yeah. And like to some extent, I remember when I first convinced Guillermo that crypto wasn't a scam. I was like, hey, like, you know what? He was like, what's the cool thing? I was like, yo, there's all these papers. They use a lot of algebra, so you're not going to like it, but it's like zero knowledge stuff. And he was just like, yeah, I can't even fucking verify any of their fucking proofs. Like they like their standard of proof is like weird.
Even the notation is
no. It's There's the whole the subscripts and superscripts, and you have functions that depend on 8 different things, even though like 7 of those are completely irrelevant. Yeah. Sorry. Anyways, but besides the point. Sorry.
Because everyone likes to write out the proof as like they write out the full algorithm instead of like analyzing the components, which like it's like a cryptographer style difference between like math people,
between normal people and cryptographers.
You should just teach one cryptographer Einstein summation notation. And then
that would make
it'll
life a lot
spread
easier.
like a virus.
Actually, I think this.
I don't think it would though. Because I feel like they like writing like 5 million.
Okay, my hottest take is that I think teaching cryptographers like a normal linear algebra course would do like wonders for humanity, where you don't actually have to write out the sums for 90% of these things. You just define them as linear operators. Anyways, sorry.
Another thing I think that's like kind of a stylistic difference you oftentimes see when you like read applied math papers from different fields is like some people like writing papers in a sense of like, oh, like here is actually the most general possible mathematical thing that like sort of correlates to this scenario. Even though like if I look at the set of all possible things you defined, less than 1/1,000,000th of a basis point of the possible things is actually like the things that you care about. And the other type of people are like people who define things too narrowly, and they like are like it's too to my use case, and then like you can't use it somewhere else. And there's always this kind of trade-off in applied research of like, do I make the most general thing or do I make the specific thing? And you kind of like have to learn that in like some ways. And I just feel like ZK people haven't figured out their sweet spot for that. And AI people were the same. Like it took them a fucking long time.
Do they have it?
20 years. I would say they don't, but it's much better than it was in the 90s.
No, this is quite true. I wouldn't even say the early 2000s. I mean, some of like, look, you read a lot of the papers, like even Random Kitchen Sinks, which is like a pretty simple paper. It's kind of illegible the original time around.
I feel like there's 2 things happening here, though. It's like one question here is like, how do we better peer review ZK papers? And the other question is, how do we fix peer review?
Sorry, this is how we
like. There are 2 topics we're talking about, right?
We're
slowly but surely.
Do we use ZKPs to fix peer review?
No.
Well, you didn't have a shitpost on this, didn't you?
Yeah. I wrote that making fun of the DSci people,
God.
though, really. But, like, it was a subtweet. I don't think anyone really got it, unfortunately.
It's fine. I got it.
Yeah, I know.
You're
That's
all
good. That's
understood.
good.
Really, I was pretty. I think I retweeted it too. There you go.
The alt harem, alt
That's right.
cartel.
Cheers to that.
Alt cartel. I guess like the main thing of these like stylistic differences, though, for things that have to be very precise, is
Which
that
part are we talking about, by the way? We're talking about like ZK being peer reviewed, or
we're getting back to that, but we're kind of talking about like this idea that like what is written in the paper, how do you actually verify the proof is correct,
Right.
And like Guillermo's philosophy is that the implementation is the actual proof, like if the implementation works, which is definitely true. Like that's the most true form. But there's also a sense in which the style in which things are written can also be adversarial to the reader, and then peer reviewers just go, LGTM, looks good to me. +1.
lazy.
Thumbs up.
Like code review has the same problem. Like for the record.
And I think this like is actually really important because especially in Fry, there's a lot of like sort of ambiguity and soundness, and there's some conjectures, and like I feel like there could have been more attention placed on that if it was a little bit more clear that those existed and like how they functioned and real protocols and so.
And is this you finding this out because of like actually trying to implement it?
Yeah. So we rely on a soundness conjecture that has not been formally proven. I believe Starkware does as well. But it's like it would be nice if there were more attention and formal proofs. But
that last
Brendan's
little
annoyed because we're just pouring more. He asked us at the beginning of this interview,
Actually,
do I have to?
And the answer
drink
is yes.
all of it?
The
And
answer was always
apparently
yes.
yes.
Because as of now, there is a bottle of mezcal that is officially empty.
Very nice. Just to the listener, this is not the future of the CK podcast. We will have normal CK podcast episodes soon. But this week, it's a week of Amsterdam. And honestly, there's a lot happening here.
I guess like one other thing that's like kind of interesting about the Trail of Bits report is just that it kind of says like, oh, well, the peer review for these ZK things was this auditing firm deciding to like go read the implementation.
Right.
And so that's where I think there's like kind of a notion of peer review that we haven't figured out push versus pull. And it's like the academic version of the world is push, like you send a centralized authority, the journal, which is some institution with some cultural definition for itself, very much like NFT DAOs, but hopefully smarter, but not all. Usually they're still humans.
Yikes, too early. Okay, go.
And then usually then they are like, push, here are the papers to review, here's what we think is cool, here's whatever, the program committee type of thing. And then people review. And then you have the opposite, like the ZK world or the high energy physics world was like this before, where there was a lot more like pull, like we just shove the shit online and like people. The problem is in the 80s there was no one else posting content on the internet. So
but in the case of an auditing firm doing it, were they hired to do an audit and then found it?
Oh,
I think they were hired to do one of the audits and then they started doing the rest. And
Yeah,
then
there's no way this was like just like, oh, we got hired to do this and therefore we like went into this. It's had to be like an internal thing, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm just curious.
So I believe that they were hired. I think another wrinkle that's sort of interesting in this case is that this bug didn't exist everywhere. So certain teams had fixed it because like
They spotted it.
No, I think Trail of Bits spotted it, but yeah. So I think there's like a deeper, like maybe structural problem in ZK where there's like not always that level of collaboration and
right.
And so
not made here.
Yeah. And so I think that's like an interesting thing. I mean, because like the bug was fairly like straightforward. It was just not including public inputs in Fiat Shamir. Which is like a pretty like
Basic.
Oof.
But actually, just a question on that. Like what you just said was like it wasn't the. I just asked like, was it that like some teams had implemented it and then found that problem and changed something? Like, well, I think the bug was in like some overarching like research paper that was implemented in the way it was supposed to be. But you just like you just said, like not everyone had the bug. I actually don't understand why they didn't.
Yeah, so I think my understanding, I could be wrong, is that in the Planck paper, it wasn't like it wasn't explicitly hashed into some input for Fiat Schmier, or it wasn't included as part of the input. And that was true in both bulletproofs and in Plonk. But there were a number of teams that just knew to do that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This is what
So
my guess is.
That's
right?
what I thought. It was implementation. But why? Did they not notice the problem?
No.
It's
The problem is people just open the paper, and these crypto papers are written as like, here's the algorithm. It's a
Yeah.
God algorithm.
Right,
and
but
I
it's
just
not
implement it
exactly.
exactly. I don't have to think about it because I assume the one in the paper is correct. There's
No, I get that, but what I don't get is like, why did somebody implement it correctly and fix that
because
and
people-
not like disclose, but why was that not communicated somehow?
It's common that people have a lot of context when they read these papers, right? It's not like in a lot of cases, right? The paper is supposed to represent like a fairly high level but reasonable idea of how one might implement this concretely, right? And in a lot of cases, like if you have enough context on the paper, it's very obvious to you that this is a thing you have to do, but one might call it an implementation detail, right?
Is it almost like because of who's actually making the changes, they're just not like super tapped into like the comms team? They're not going to be the people who are like raising like.
I mean, like, why would you?
Escalating it up. They're just like, we're going to, this
In some
kind of
sense,
doesn't
it's
work. I'm going to
obvious.
fix it.
Well, like,
But then it doesn't go higher that
Right.
like people who have like
So-
decided to use the paper, they're not aware.
so in some sense, like when you read the paper and you have enough context, it's like almost an obvious thing, right? It's a thing you just read and you're like, yeah, I mean, of course, like they didn't do this check in the paper because it's like, why would you do it? You should already know to do it, right? But in general, this is not true. I mean, as we found clearly, right? If you just implement straight algorithms in the paper in the same way as if you implement like a lot of like mathematical papers by just like reading the thing kind of front to back and being like, all right, here's what I need to do. It's not immediately obvious that you have to do these like extra checks, these like even like in a lot of cases you're doing kind of a lot of reductions down into like something that you can actually use. So it's I think it's a lot of contextual questions that are not easy to answer.
This is a bit of a like left field, but like coming back to Amsterdam, where we are right now.
Oh no.
There were a few topics we had meant to talk about that we have not, because we've kind of run out of time. But
And
I
we've
think
also had a whole bottle of mezcal.
I also think the conversation we had was pretty amazing. But I am wondering, what are, in a short moment, like what are the takeaways from this week? What are the ideas? You had sort of said earlier on, like idea-wise, you didn't feel like necessarily inspired, but like, what do you think are the topics, at least, that are being discussed right now, or something that you're thinking about?
I think MEV Day, again, and not to harp on it being what I thought was a really great event. Congratulations to Tina for also give her. I want to give her a shout, like clap and shout out, because that was Tina's been putting on events for a long time, just like you, Anna, and like I feel like she had started by being renegade and ragtag and like would like do these free events and then
What the fuck, DeFi?
Yes,
What the
exactly.
fuck?
And
What
they-
was the other one? WTF?
MEV.
MEV, yeah.
MEV,
MEV.WTF, yeah.
yeah.
So she like did these kind of like very grassroots
So cool.
events that like to see it grow to something is actually like I just like feel like as her friend, I just feel like she like has clearly like built
Awesome.
this institution around it. And also just like I did think they got a lot of interesting talks. I don't think anyone answered the question that I care about personally and Guillermo cares about.
Which is?
Just like, how do you actually write down some type of like mathematical theory about MEV that like actually combines things that we know about? Like,
I mean, as we found, it's a hard question to answer.
it's a very hard
to be
question to
fair.
answer because there's some notion of like subjectivity of value, but there's also some
Yep.
notion of like optimality when you have many parties, like defining the social welfare of like all the participants is actually quite hard. It might actually be in some cases, and I think this is something I really kind of felt a lot from that MEV day, is like the existence of MEV for a lot of chains actually is a good thing. It like drives volume there, and it actually has these like weird ironic effects of like, oh, volume increased because people are getting sandwiched. Oh, people add more liquidity because they're like, oh, there's more volume here. And it like
Wow.
has this weird like growth hacking bootstrap effect.
Bad metrics, but also
Are
interesting.
you an accelerationist? As
Like
Dean
Dean?
kept saying?
I am not per se. I do think Dean had a very funny comment, which is like, I would never use a chain that I make money from.
Oh, that is actually
That was like, he's like, they're all centralized. I thought that was like a very harsh.
that was actually he's like, I will not mention them,
Brutal.
but
But then he just said BSC, like almost
Like-
the neck. He's like, there's 21 validators, and
is-
11 of them are owned by an exchange. It's almost like he like said it.
He actually said that on the episode we did with him.
Oh,
Yeah.
did he? Okay.
That's all clear. Yeah.
Yeah. He
I mean,
loves.
this is-
He
I think it's pretty-
He loves
I
shitting
feel
on
like
pretty
BSC.
straight.
I feel like it's the MEV chain though. Like as far as I know, there's like several people on it, and everyone is just like there just to make money.
But it's not just that. It's also just there's a lot of like retail usage in South America and Asia
Oh,
that uses
is there on
BSC.
BSC?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, shit, I
it's
didn't
like
know that,
Binance.
actually.
Binance has extremely high
I knew in Asia, but I had no idea
penetration.
in South America.
So in South
Holy
America,
shit.
BUSD is actually people basically do remittances by just sending BUSD between Binance
Not
accounts.
UST.
No, apparently because like most of them, their only gateway is like Binance. Binance has a
Oh,
huge
okay.
penetration in South America.
Wow, holy shit! I had no idea.
Not Central America.
No, South America,
South,
pure, proper. Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
South,
yeah, yeah.
South per se, because like
Sure.
Bitso and stuff definitely own Mexico and that area, but. It is actually quite interesting that a lot of the capital inflows are basically Latin America and Asia, and the reason there's so much BUSD demand comes from people who are basically using Binance as their bank in
You
places.
mean
that
you don't like whatever 5,000% inflation in Venezuela? You know, there's better inflationary or not inflationary tools.
Guillermo
for that.
is Venezuelan, so he has firsthand experience with ohm-like inflation in
That's
stable
right.
coins.
That's right. And it did not have provable bounds on like
Yes.
our most recent paper or whatever.
Yes.
You know.
The thing that was interesting is like I think one thing that has been kind of the narrative around MEV is generally like it's predatory, it's bad, it's whatever. But I think like there are conditions, and like if you could understand the theory, you can actually understand a little more of like when it actually is useful for a network. It's
Fair.
not necessarily always bad, which I think maybe is like a contrarian thing to say, but it actually is useful for some. I'm not like in some cases it is extracting value from users, no doubt. But in some cases, it's actually like increasing liquidity for users. So like
Interesting.
if the amount that's
Fair
taken from them versus the like decrease in transaction costs is different, then
Yeah.
like it actually can be positive. And listening to a lot of the people talking, especially the traders, I was actually like more surprised at like some of the things they're saying where like they effectively increased their participation in certain networks because they were doing MEV on them, which improves
Wow.
user quality.
And something. I mean, it certainly improves like
With the
pricing.
bad comes the good.
Right.
So like I just don't like this kind of like, look, everyone
and yet,
humans
I
love
still put them in the category of bad.
humans love false dichotomies.
That's
They
right,
love
that's
this
right,
idea
that's
of
right.
this binary classifier that you
That's
can
right.
just like always just you rely on as the ultimate heuristic. The worst one of the internet has produced is the word cell and shape rotator one.
Oh,
Wait,
but
what
no,
is it?
you're
Wait,
not
what did you
mentioning this in
say?
this episode. No,
did
you're
you say?
not. You are not bringing up the other Tarun
Say
in
it.
this episode.
I'd say the worst binary sort of classification dichotomy that humans have is that have made on the internet in this last year is the word cell versus shape rotator one, which
Cell
Word
cell.
word cell
versus shape rotator.
shape rotator.
God
That's what
help
I couldn't
us
get
all.
from
I
what you
cannot
just said.
believe is Tarun in
no,
group.
don't worry, I'm not going to Vibe Camp. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone.
Brooke. We promise.
I promise I'm not in the Center for Applied Rationality.
Well, I think that's everyone who is like ex Center for Applied Rationality, right?
Yeah. So I guess the point I want to kind of maybe put across is like MEV Day as a really interesting event, having worked in high frequency trading before, is like you would never have that type of conference. And people would never be that honest about kind of
Yeah.
like
What they
things.
do.
And you would also not get the feeling that there were a lot of people there who are like, oh yeah, like actually there's some positives to it for certain networks. And certain types of applications do better when you have that. And as application and base protocol security start getting more intertwined, we are going to inevitably see that like there's going to be good MEV and bad MEV. And it's kind of going to be too much of a catch-all phrase that doesn't actually capture the nuance of the difference.
I did actually notice just generally this week the use of the word MEV kind of constantly being confused.
It's even like
Whereas,
ZK,
like,
ZK and MEV both get
MEV
used when they're not. They're like, supposed to.
Yeah,
be.
it's like MEV equals sandwiching equal, and that's the only way, and it's always bad, and it's kind of ruthless. And then like someone's like, no, it's more complicated. And then it's complicated to actually describe
So
why it's more nuanced.
My
I've
favorite
seen that.
kind of, of the like 6 or 7 whatever panels and talks I did, the one that was
attended was on and moderated. Yeah. Intense, man.
was one where Phil Diane was a moderator, and he brought Eric Budish, who is a famous academic from UChicago, who invented this concept of the batch auction, which was supposed to kind of destroy HFT, and like, of course, it's turned out it didn't work. It in fact didn't work, but fully. Like I think the theory has a lot of merit. But one interesting thing I learned from this talk, I've had a lot of respect for Budish's work, but interestingly, I learned Phil, first of all, was quite inspired by Budish, and that's sort of how he got into thinking about flashbots, because he was like, how do we make a batch auction for this stuff? Because of I know, but like, look, that's just someone's life, their story, and so. And then I basically was we were on this panel, and like, it's very interesting because like you have me and Lev, and Felix from CalSwap, and the three of us are like way more in the weeds and like thinking about like the kind of transaction level details, technical details. And then we have like Phil, who's kind of like the philosopher king moderator, and then we have Eric Budish, who's like economist, who like probably couldn't write code, like couldn't tell you anything about Ethereum transaction ordering to save his life, but he clearly had this kind of view that he's like, yes, this is going to like, we're going to like implement all my ideas. And then we had like, Lev and me and Felix giving a lot of interesting counterexamples. And one thing that was very clear at the end of this was that like Budish left this thing thinking that like, he came in thinking that like Flashbots was just his idea kind of like implemented and like it provided the same benefits. And I think he left feeling like, oh fuck, actually it's like more complicated. It's not always bad. Like there was like all these like
interesting.
And so that's kind of where I think sometimes this like being able to kind of have the dialectic, ironically, given Dean, the dialectic and multilectic perspective on these things is actually extremely important.
Fair enough.
Cool. I think this may bring us to the end of our episode. I feel like we could continue forever.
If we're not careful, we might.
We might.
Absolutely.
Alcohol dilates time.
Yes.
That's fair enough. Oh,
but
yes,
it was an incredibly fun time. And I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And even though we went a little off the ZK podcast track a little bit, I think it's good. Why not?
No, I think it's phenomenal.
I also feel like isn't it time for this show to also like expand and evolve and allow for more spontaneity and more.
It's a spicy take.
Yeah. Thank you, Mescal.
Cheers to you.
Anyways, thank you guys for doing this interview.
Yeah,
It was fun and it went completely off what we had planned, but I think it's better this way.
I think, if you never actually gone drinks with me, the number one thing you've hopefully learned from the episodes, I love saying the word epistemology. The more alcohol, the more it's like
more he drinks,
the more I drink, I
the
say
word
like philosophy
epistemology
words
comes
and
out.
like kind of for better or worse. So
Very nice.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Thank you for coming back. And Brendan, thanks for coming on for this like very spontaneous
Insane.
interview.
Yeah, thanks, Anna, for having me. It was a lot of fun.
we in the process we did anoint the Polygon polynomials, which is
Which is
happen.
good.
That's
I
right.
heard
Gonna
that
happen.
happened on Twitter, and now Tarun, I heard,
Might be
is
real.
the head of marketing at
Oh yeah,
Polygon.
the CMO.
Apparently, JD has anointed me.
Congratulations. Congratulations on your new position, Tarun.
One tweet. All it took. All right. I want to say thank you to the podcast team and to our listeners. Thanks for listening.